Good day. It's Thursday, July the 31st, 2025. Welcome to the Daily Article Podcast from Denison Forum. I'm Chris Elkins, narrating today's daily article written by our CEO, Dr. Jim Denison. A bloody late-night brawl in downtown Cincinnati last weekend has generated national attention. The video of the fight early Saturday shows a crowd milling around before several people start throwing punches. One man falls to the ground and is repeatedly punched and kicked by bystanders. A woman is struck in the face and falls to the ground, lying motionless before another woman helps her. Several people took videos of the attack, but only one person called 911. Video evidence shows the man and woman who were beaten to be white and their assailants to be black. A senior figure in the U.S. Justice Department suggested that the attack may have been motivated by race and that suspects could be charged with federal hate crimes. I obviously have no idea what motivated these assaults, nor what moved people to record them but not call the police. Here's what I hope was not at work. A critical theory ideological belief that because the attackers were part of a racial minority, as a victimized collective, they have the right to oppress their oppressors without consequences to themselves. Such racism to combat racism is the opposite of Dr. King's vision of a nation in which people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. It undoes what the civil rights movement sought to achieve by returning us to a culture of racially divided subcultures. And it perpetuates America's quote-unquote original sin of slavery by treating some Americans as less worthy of our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, before proceeding, I must emphatically state that I would have precisely the same fear for our nation if the assailants had been white and the victims black. Such attacks have horrifically been part of America's story from our beginnings. Ku Klux Klan lynchings, Jim Crow discrimination, and police brutality against civil rights marchers were as unconscionable then as racially motivated attacks are today. Any and all racial prejudice and violence fly in the face of our founding credo, our melting pot e pluribus unum aspirations, and our collective flourishing. And such hatred grieves the heart of the Father who loves each of us as if there were only one of us. In his last speech as President of the United States, Ronald Reagan stated, quote, "I think it fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote to me and said, 'You can go live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go and live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or a Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American.'" End quote. Of course, this sentiment implies and requires a cohesive culture common to all Americans. Otherwise, one can live in America, but there's no such thing as an American one can become. This cohesive culture was what John Adams meant when he said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. There cannot otherwise be enough laws, lawyers, judges, and police to regulate behavior in a democracy as large as ours. Brawls, such as what took place in Cincinnati, illustrate the fact that the police cannot be everywhere at once. Video surveillance can help catch criminals, but it cannot prevent criminal acts. Apart from consensual morality, people can do nearly anything to anyone. They can be apprehended later, but the victim is already victimized. It may surprise you to read that while I appreciate John Adams' claim that a moral and religious people is essential to our democracy, I disagree with his optimism regarding religion. He lived in a day when George Washington could say to Americans, quote, "With slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles," end quote. That day is not this day. Americans are more divided by religion, or the lack thereof, and political principles than ever before in my lifetime. And being religious does not necessarily ensure morality. The Apostle Paul, one of the most zealous religious figures of all time, nonetheless admitted in Romans 7, verses 18 and 19, I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. It was the religious leaders who rejected Jesus and condemned him to death. Radical jihadists have murdered millions in the misguided belief that they are serving Allah and Islam. Many who advocated for slavery in America did so on the basis of their horribly misguided, quote-unquote, biblical beliefs. What America needs most is what all Americans need, a relationship with Jesus Christ so intimate that it molds our sinful hearts into his character described in Romans 8, verse 29. As Oswald Chambers observed, Jesus came to make me what he teaches I should be. The redemption means that Jesus can put into any man the disposition that ruled his own life, and all the standards God gives are based on that disposition. End quote. The more Americans demonstrate the character of Christ, the more America becomes a nation God can bless, affirmed by Psalm 33, verse 12. We can give our nation and ourselves no greater gift. Tuesday marked the death of William Wilberforce in 1833. Wilberforce was born in 1759. During a tour of Europe as a young man, he was greatly influenced by reading a book by William Law titled A Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life. Wilberforce considered entering the vocational ministry, but persuaded that his call was to serve God through politics, served in Parliament from 1780 to 1825. He is best known for leading the fight against slavery in England. 4 days before his death, a bill for the abolition of all slavery in British territories passed its crucial vote. The next year, on July the 31st, 1834, 800,000 slaves, primarily in the British West Indies, were set free. Wilberforce changed the world when he took to heart William Law's call to holiness. Following his example, I have begun reading Law's remarkable book, where I found a statement that convicted me deeply. Quote, if you will here stop and ask yourself why you are not as pious as the primitive Christians were, your own heart will tell you that it is neither through ignorance nor inability, but purely because you have never thoroughly intended it. End quote. How thoroughly do you intend to follow Jesus today? The Denison Forum team is grateful for our daily article podcast subscribers. Please share the podcast with others. And for more news discerned differently, visit denisonforum.org.